As anticipated, news from the Wrexham camp in the past couple of weeks has been very quiet, and there's one big reason for that. It's the start of the 2026 World Cup. There's been basically no news on the Wrexham front. We've not seen any transfer rumours, not much club news, but today I've been able to pick out some information that, despite everything that's going on with the World Cup, there is some big bits of news that I am going to be bringing you today. We're going to be looking at the transfer window front and what Phil Parkinson and CEO Michael Williamson have to say on what Wrexham's approach will be as we look to get that promotion to the Premier League this season in the 26-27 campaign. I'll also bring you an in-depth scout report on a potential midfielder that could be joining the club from an Austrian side, and I'm also going to be looking at the latest updates regarding the progression of the 7,500 seater cop stand and the new training facilities. But before we get into today's video, if you are looking for the best Wrexham AFC content, it's coming your way on the channel. We're on the road to 29,000 subscribers, and there's going to be consistent content coming your way over the course of the summer. Like I said, in terms of our pre-season tours to a lot of different countries across the world, there'll be lots of content on that. Transfer news, player departures, it's all being covered on the channel. So if you would like to support me, then make sure to click the red subscribe button. Let's start the video off with looking at the transfer window. Now, it's one of the best times of the year for Wrexham fans and just for football fans in general, because we get to see the players that we're going to sign, the players that are going to leave the club. It's the time of year where everyone absolutely loves it because you hear the rumours as well, and I think it'll be no different this summer up in North Wales for Wrexham in terms of players being linked to the club, money being spent like we've seen in the past transfer windows as we've been a championship side. We brought in 16 players last year across the summer transfer window in 2025 and the January window in 2026. And this season, from Wrexham's approach, I don't think I would be shocked at all if we saw that number half, even go below 8 players that we do sign across the board of the season. Because if you are looking at this Wrexham side, we've established a side that can comfortably challenge for playoffs in the Championship. We narrowly missed out in our first attempt, our first season ever in the Championship, first season in the second tier for God knows how long. We established ourselves, we got up the table, we outperformed some big teams in this division, and I do think Wrexham next season, if we do perfect this transfer window, we could go that one step further. And I do think it's about bringing 3 or 4 starters into the side, boosting the overall quality of the squad. And in terms of bringing players in, you are looking at the players that need to come into the side to take us from narrowly missing out, finishing 7th, to getting that solid 5th or 4th place. And if we are looking at what Phil Parkinson had to say on the transfer window, I think it's fairly understandably stated that the impact the World Cup has had on potential incomings and outcomings, it slowed things down in terms of players coming into the club, because I think it's evident that Phil Parkinson is possibly going to be looking at players that are currently playing in the 2026 World Cup. And he's also said he's not anticipating a lot of movement over the next few weeks. Now, that doesn't rule out players possibly leaving the club. I think in what his words are saying, I think that's talking about incomings to Wrexham. So I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see 1 or 2 players leave, get that early departure to a club, settle down and have a full pre-season with them. So I do think it will be interesting to see what does happen, especially on the incoming front, because I think it's expected that we're going to be bringing in a holding midfielder, a striker, and maybe even a wing back on both sides. So it's going to be a busy window for Wrexham, and like I said, we're not going to see 16 players join the club. We're going to see probably half that number. But the quality of players that we are going to bring in, and I think it does tie in perfectly with what the CEO Michael Williamson had to say on the matter. He said it's about quality, not quantity in this summer transfer window, and I think he's hit the nail on the head. I don't think we should be looking to tweak a winning side that much. I do think, like I said, we maybe need guaranteed 3 players that are going to come into this side that are going to take us, like I said, from narrowly missing out to possibly competing at the top end of the table. And what that consists of is, in my opinion, a better right wing back, a striker to compete with Kiefer Moore and Sam Smith. I do think we need maybe a different style of player up front that can, just run the lines, score goals, be a nuisance up front, and I do think maybe another central midfielder. So it is going to be interesting because it's such a crucial transfer window for Wrexham as we look to go one better this season. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What positions do you think Wrexham need to strengthen in the upcoming window? Looking at the updates on the cop stand and the training centre at Wrexham, it's very busy on the infrastructure side of things. the club have officially submitted the planning application for the new training building at Colliers Park. Now, the pavilion does consist of a gym, physio-medical facilities, offices, and just an official day-to-day hub for the staff and the players to work in and not having to worry about going to Carden Park, going to Colliers Park. They're going to have that official hub in Colliers Park, which they can use, like I said, on a day-to-day basis, which I think will be a massive coup in terms of possibly bringing in players that they now know that they've got an official hub where they can work, they can be treated well, they've got all the best facilities. So I do think it's a step in the right direction in terms of the infrastructure side of things at Wrexham. It's not perfect. We still want to get that official training ground, that official permanent training ground, and we don't have to get permission off the FAW or go over to Carden Park. So I think it will be a matter of time once the cop's up that Wrexham do look out for possibly a plot of land and build that training ground. So I do think it's worth keeping an eye on that. But for the meantime, we've got this training centre and we're just waiting on the approval from the council before work can commence. And officially, when I'm doing this video, I do believe that there is some footage on YouTube somewhere, or people have said on social media that there's good progression being made. So again, it's a step in the right direction. The club are doing all the best things and all the things they can do to improve the club off the pitch. And as for the cop stand, wow, that's all I can say. Wow, it's been erected at an incredibly fast rate, and in comparison to the 2nd of May where we watched the final game at home to Middlesbrough, and just to the other day I passed it going through Wrexham, and you just look up, you go past the Mould Road stand if you go along the Mould Road, and you look left and you are just mesmerised. The sheer size of the cop stand, it's not even up, we've not even seen the second tier go up, and it is massive. It completely dwarfs the Mould Road, the Wrexham Lager and the Tech End. It is going to be a thing of beauty. And if we are looking at the progression that McLaren have made on the cop stand, the staircases within both cores are complete, steelwork is continuing in the concourse and mid-terraced areas, and the framework of the stand is very, very visible. Now, if you drive through Wrexham, if you drive over the top of Wrexham going down, you can see the cop stand. It is just absolutely massive, and it's going to be a thing of absolute beauty, and I'm sure there's going to be thousands of fans that want to get their season tickets and want to get tickets inside the cop stand, because yeah, it's going to be magical. It's a big step in the right direction. It's a big step in the progression of Wrexham Football Club in the past 5 years. Let's get looking next on transfer news. Now, Sky Sports Austria are reporting that Wrexham are showing strong interest in an attempt to sign 23-year-old midfielder Romeo Amane from Rapid Vienna over in the Austrian Bundesliga. Championship sides Birmingham City and Sheffield United are also in the mix and are interested in signing the young midfielder. Now, if we are looking at Amane as a midfielder, he's a midfielder who operates in the modern day number 8, you could say, and has really made a name for himself. In his first full season in Austrian football, where he's played near 50 games for Rapid Vienna, proving to be a key asset in their midfield and having a really good season. Now, having looked at scout reports on Amane, and it looks as if he's the type of midfielder that Wrexham could really do with, and a midfielder that I think if Wrexham are going to go out there and sign a profile of a midfielder, I would be looking to sign one of Amane's. He's hard working in the middle of the park, and as we would say over here in the UK, you describe him as a terrier in midfield. He's one that's going to run his socks off for 90 minutes, constantly looking to get on the ball, be a good passer, work hard, bring the intensity, bring the tempo into the midfield, which I do think at times Wrexham didn't have in the midfield, and we'll get talking on that later on in the video. But if we are looking further on Amane, he's a press-resistant midfielder who likes to get on the ball, keep things ticking, and just be that player that, you can guarantee that solidity in midfield, the one that can keep the structure well. And I do think if we are looking at Amane even further as a player and what he could bring to this Wrexham setup, he's not a player that you're going to see have a big involvement in the final third, but instead he's one that keeps the structure well and can offer consistent tempo and hard work, which I do think is going to be interesting to see if Wrexham do pursue the signing of Amane even further, because I do think if you are looking at the style of play and the style of play that Wrexham do have in that midfield 8, you're looking at Ben Sheaf, you're looking at Matty James, they're players that are maybe not as fast as you might see some other midfielders in the Championship, but play with a good IQ, good passes of the ball. So I think in terms of Amane coming into this Wrexham system and fitting into the system, I think he'd be a style of player that we haven't really seen before under the takeover of Ryan and Rob, and I think it would be a step in a different direction for Phil Parkinson if he is to recruit a player of his quality and of his style of play, because we're used to those players, like I just said, that have a good IQ, that make up for their lack of pace with a good IQ. They sort of stay in that centralised position. But if we are looking at Amane, his positive-minded approach and his ball carrying could offer a completely different approach in this Wrexham setup and an extra element of fluidity. So I do think it would be very interesting to see what would happen with Amane if he did come into this setup, because you're looking at Matty James, you're looking at Ben Sheaf. We saw Ollie Rathbone earlier on in the League One season. He had that intensity, that tempo in midfield. He was then moved onto that sort of central attacking midfield position. So whether Phil Parkinson can possibly see an attacking side to Amane's game, that's why he could be bringing him into the club. I think that's going to be an interesting one. I think there's going to be questions raised if Wrexham do pursue this further as to where Amane would fit in. And I think looking at Amane and his attributes, I do think he'd be a good addition to this squad to sort of just freshen things up and freshen that approach up in midfield, because I do think at times we do lack pace. I do think we lack that sort of intensity between the lines, between, you know, the likes of Ben Sheaf and Matty James and Nathan Broadhead and Josh Windass. However, bringing a player in, could that sort of limit the creativity and that ball progression of the likes of Broadhead and Josh Windass? It might cramp things up in the final third, but it can never be a bad thing if you're bringing in a midfielder that's just going to play forward, that's going to look for those balls out to the channel, thread the ball between the lines, create that tricky pass. So I think it would be interesting. I do think there's a lot of positives, and I do think the positives completely outweigh the negatives in terms of this signing of Romeo Amane. And if we are looking, players from the Austrian Bundesliga, Rapid Vienna, they're not going to go out there and demand a price tag of 10 million, 15 million pound. I do think if Wrexham play things right, play our cards right in terms of what we could offer Amane going forward, and just be honest in terms of what his stance would be in this Wrexham squad, I don't think the price tag would be too hefty either, and we could possibly be looking maybe 3 to 4 million pounds. So it could be a really good bit of business. It could be a sensible bit of business for Wrexham in terms of his attributes coming into this side, and given the fact he's coming off the back of his first really good season in Austrian football, I do think he's ready for that step elsewhere, possibly at a high level, which I do think the Championship completely outweighs the quality of the Austrian Bundesliga. So it's going to be an interesting one what happens. He's not short of options. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Would you look at signing Romeo Amane, or would you look elsewhere for someone that might have proven themselves over in the English leagues? So that is it for today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like. Like I said, let's try and hit 300 likes on today's video. Make sure to subscribe, do all that good stuff, turn the notification bell on if you are looking for more Wrexham content, and if you would like to be first on the channel when the videos do come out. I hope you're all enjoying the World Cup. For me, I can't really get into it so far. I don't know what it is. I'm just not really taken to it. I think the hydration breaks are quite annoying. They're the one that's got really under my skin so far, because I do think it is used as a commercialisation side of things in terms of bringing the adverts on. I don't think it really is a hydration break. But again, there's been some good games. USA absolutely battering Paraguay. We've got some big games coming up. You know, there's some good teams out there. You're looking at Curacao, Cape Verde as well, putting up good fights, bringing those cultures into America, Canada and Mexico. So I think the tournament will get better as games go on. Of course, it's expanded now to 48 teams, so you go and see these games where there's countries of lesser quality being battered by teams, you know, that are well established in these tournaments. So I think we're always going to see that, but there's going to be some big group stage games coming up, and let me know your thoughts if you're watching in the comment section down below. Until the next one, take care guys. Up the Championship Reds.